We sometimes think of when someone is iron deficient, then they just feel tired or weak or look a little bit pale, but it actually can show up in kind of some sneaky ways also. Are you a busy woman who prioritizes everyone else's health above your own? Do you have questions about your diet, exercise, or how to prevent or treat certain health conditions? Are you always Googling health questions that you forget to ask or are embarrassed to ask your primary care physician? Girl, do you even have a primary care physician? Well, welcome to Headed to Healthier. I'm Dr. Brittany Anderson, a board-certified family medicine physician, and every day in my private practice, I have discussions with women just like you who are doing their best to juggle the demands of life while also desiring to become healthier. Inside this podcast, you'll find practical and actionable health tips that you can incorporate into your daily life. You'll get expert advice and insight from some of my awesome healthcare colleagues, and you'll hear relatable conversations with incredible women just like you who have made their health a priority and are thriving because of it. So throw on your sneakers and get some steps in while you listen. Or if you're driving, get those hands at 10 and 2 and let's dig in. We are headed to healthier. Hey friend, welcome back to the show. I'm so glad that you're listening to this episode. So if you have been feeling tired or dragging through your day or just feel like you're not quite yourself lately, this episode may just be the one for you. Because today we're going to talk about something that we sometimes miss, and that's iron deficiency, and specifically iron deficiency in women. Most of the folks listening to this show are females, and one of my goals is to kind of bring to you things that we see commonly in women, things that may help you to become healthier. And so before you tune out thinking, that's not me, my doctor hasn't said anything to me about being iron deficient or having anemia, hear me out first, because this may be the missing piece of your fatigue puzzle. As a matter of fact, when I have patients come into clinic, especially women, and they report feeling tired all the time or just not feeling like they're themselves, feeling sluggish as they go through the day, checking for iron deficiency anemia is pretty high on the list of things I think about. Now, of course, I've also got to think about vitamin deficiency. Is their vitamin B12 low or their vitamin D? Do they have sleep apnea? Do they have kids who are involved in every extracurricular activity known to man? Are they having thyroid changes and that's why they're tired? Is it a busy job that's causing them to be tired? Or are they just flat out doing the most all the time? So those are some of the things that run through my mind, but iron deficiency anemia is definitely on the list. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to talk with you guys about it. As always, I'm not giving you medical advice. I am a physician, but I'm not necessarily your physician, although I know some of my patients listen to this. I just want us to have a conversation and to have that conversation about iron deficiency anemia because I do see it so commonly in my clinic, and it's something that we really should think about when women come into clinic and report feeling fatigue. So let's get into it. So I want to start by talking about why iron deficiency matters. And iron isn't just about anemia, but really it plays a huge role in how we feel day to day, especially our energy levels. So to explain it, your body uses iron to make hemoglobin. All right, your body needs iron in order to make hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is a protein that's in your red blood cells that carries oxygen. So it makes sense then that if your iron is low, then your hemoglobin is going to be low. And if your hemoglobin's low, you're not going to get oxygen to the places that need it. And so your cells won't get the oxygen that's needed. And think about it like this. If your cells are tired because they're not getting the oxygen they need, you're going to be tired. And so we're talking about real fatigue here, not just, I stayed up too late, I'm tired from that, or, I haven't been sleeping well the last few nights. I mean a fatigue that is when patients come in and say, Dr. Anderson, I sleep all night and I'm just exhausted all day. If this sounds familiar to you, iron deficiency anemia may be something to think about. Again, like I mentioned before, there's several other things to think about, but iron deficiency anemia is up there. And so to think about what iron does in our body, let's just zoom out a little bit for a second. So iron helps with oxygen transport, like we've already mentioned. Iron can help with muscle function, and so sometimes people who are iron deficient will complain of being weak or just feeling like their muscles are achy for no real reason. Iron can help with brain health, and so if your iron is low, it can affect your focus, your memory, and even your mood. Iron plays a role in temperature regulation, so sometimes people who are iron deficient will complain of having cold hands and feet, and also it plays a role in supporting our immune system. So yeah, iron pulls a lot of weight in our body, and so like I was saying before, that starts to explain some of the symptoms that people may present with when they come into the doctor's office. So, we sometimes think of when someone is iron deficient, then they just feel tired or weak or look a little bit pale, but it actually can show up in kind of some sneaky ways also. We already brought up the fatigue, but shortness of breath is another one. And sometimes people will complain of being short of breath even with light activity. Once we rule out something going on in their chest, with their lungs, or their heart, we've got to think about iron deficiency anemia. The brain fog that I mentioned earlier, folks who may feel, mentally sluggish or forgetful. Sometimes the presenting complaint that people will give me in my clinic is restless legs. They're laying in bed at night and just feel like they can't keep their legs still. So it's called restless leg syndrome, and it happens most commonly at nighttime. But the most common cause of restless leg syndrome is iron deficiency anemia. So that's one that we don't always think about. Sometimes people will have brittle nails or have hair loss. Sometimes folks may feel more anxious or irritable for no clear reasons. And so even as I'm seeing patients and thinking about some mental health concerns, etc., I'll make sure if they report feeling anxious or feeling like their heart is racing, I need to be making sure that they're not actually anemic and that they're not iron deficient. And then some people will get odd cravings. So an example of that is people who chew ice, and that is called pica. And so I'll tell you, if your coworker in the cubicle down from you is chomping on ice all the time, I'm not telling you got to make a diagnosis for it, but he or she may just be iron deficient, and that may be the way it presents. So pica, some people will eat dirt or other things that are not actually edible and not meant to be eaten. So ice is one thing, but sometimes you'll get other forms of pica where folks are eating things that truly should not be eaten. Now, you certainly don't have to have all of these things to be considered iron deficient, but if you're listening to this, if you're driving down the road listening to this and nodding your head as I'm saying some of these things, it may be worth considering, do you have iron deficiency anemia? Because again, women are at higher risk for it. I certainly see it more commonly in women than in men. When I see a man who is iron deficient or has anemia, I've got to be thinking about, where is this man losing that blood? For a woman, though, it kind of makes sense for us to think about where we're losing that blood. Women have periods, and especially if you're having heavy or prolonged bleeding during your period, that can be a major risk factor for having iron deficiency anemia. A lot of times women will have anemia in pregnancy, and so sometimes after a woman has recently delivered a child, and if her iron didn't get fully replenished after the pregnancy, she'll be iron deficient. Also in people who eat plant-based diet or folks who don't eat a lot of red meat. Now, I'm not encouraging that you eat a lot of red meat because it comes with its own health issues like high cholesterol and other things, but those folks may not be getting enough dietary iron. And then there's some people who just, for whatever reason, maybe it's because of GI or gut issues, their body's not able to absorb iron like they need to. So those are the people who are most at risk for having iron deficiency anemia. So again, it makes sense why we commonly see it, or more commonly see it, in women. So I may have someone come into my clinic and they tell me some of these symptoms, some of the things that I mentioned, that they feel a little bit tired, that and maybe they're having some restlessness of their legs at night, that they feel just more foggy as they go through the day. They may report having cold hands and feet, or feeling their heart race, or chewing ice all the time. My first thought is going to be to get some labs done. And that makes sense. While there's some things you can do on exam to be able to tell if you think someone is a little bit anemic, you really don't know what you got until you check the labs. And there are some labs that we check that look just for like your hemoglobin or hematocrit, but if you're thinking about iron deficiency anemia, there's some kind of specific iron studies that should be checked. And so I don't want you to think that it can be part of just your basic lab work, or to think, oh, well, I had just my regular yearly labs checked a few months ago and everything was fine there. A lot of times when we're looking for true iron deficiency anemia, we need to be ordering specific tests for it. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, when I get the labs and I find that someone is really iron deficient, then I've got to do something about it. And there are a couple ways that you can start to build someone's iron back up. The first is your diet. So think about some foods that are iron rich. Now, these are going to include red meat, and I kind of hit on that a little bit before, and liver. So liver is really high in iron. Now, I'm going to pause here and shout out my mom if she's listening. You still owe me an apology. When I was a young kid, I was iron deficient all the time, and my mom would force me to eat liver. And to this day, I don't like the sound of liver. I don't like the smell of liver. I don't like the idea of liver, but do believe that if I have a patient who is iron deficient, I'm telling them that they need to think about adding some liver into their diet. But if they turn their nose up and say, no way, Dr. Anderson, I absolutely don't give them a hard time because I've been there. I've done that, and it is no fun. But if you like liver, do you, friend? I just can't deal with it. Other foods, so spinach is really high in iron, lentils, pumpkin seeds are all good sources of iron too. And also we know that pairing iron with vitamin C helps to boost absorption. So thinking about doing foods or things that we may drink that are high in vitamin C with the intake of foods that are high in liver. So think about like spinach and lemon or steak and bell peppers, but pairing those things together because we know that vitamin C helps to increase our body's absorption of iron. Some people also take supplements, and so there are lots of supplements out there, some that are a little bit easier on our belly than some others are. One of the biggest complaints that people have when they're taking iron supplements is that they get a little bit constipated with it. So there's certain formulations of iron that are out there that, again, are just a little bit more gentle on people's GI system. And again, generally, if I'm telling patients to take iron supplements, whether they're getting them over the counter or if it's me prescribing them, I'm asking them to take it with a little bit of vitamin C to help boost absorption. So take it with a little bit of orange juice. Some of them do require that they be taken on an empty stomach, but a little bit of orange juice or vitamin C source to take it with sometimes can be helpful. And then there's some people whose body just cannot tolerate or can't absorb oral iron or who have really low iron levels. And those people then have to do IV iron. The really important thing to note here is to not start taking an iron supplement without talking to your physician. So don't just think, oh, well, I've got a lot of those things she mentioned. Let me go pick up some iron and start taking it, twice a day or 3 times a day or however often Google tells you to take it, because taking too much iron and your iron level being high can also be really dangerous. So sometimes I'll have folks come into clinic and they will complain of feeling tired and fatigue. And, I start saying, oh, well, let's go through some labs. And after we talk through it, I'm going to just check and make sure that your iron levels are fine. And they say, oh, well, I've been taking, iron 3 times a day for the last 2 months and I've not noticed any improvement. And then I say, well, did someone check your iron and tell you that you were low and that you needed to be taking that much iron? And then I'll go and check labs and their iron will be actually elevated, but they're still tired, which means that was never the cause of them being tired or having fatigue in the first place. So, this, like several other things that you'll hear me talk about later, this is one of those that fits into my category of test, don't guess situations. And when I say to my patients, hey, let's test instead of just making a guess here, it means that let me actually do the workup. Let me find that your iron really is low before you start taking any extra. So if you take anything away from this conversation, I want you not to just say, oh, I had several of those things she mentioned. Let me go pick up some iron from the store and start taking it. But instead, what I want to do is encourage you to talk to your physician, talk to your healthcare provider about those symptoms that you may be having, and let her or him test your levels and see if you actually are deficient in iron and if you need to have that replaced. And if so, in what way? Is it mild and it can just be replaced by diet? Do you need to take something by mouth, or does it need to be IV? So that's my takeaway for you: to test, don't guess. And again, I say that very often through the day. And when we're talking about iron deficiency, it definitely falls right into that category as well. So as we wrap up, here's the deal. If you've been tired for a while and nothing seems to help, and you've tried getting more sleep, you took to heart all of that advice that Dr. Anna Kute gave us in one of our previous episodes about how to unlock your best sleep. So if you're doing all those things and still find yourself really tired or fatigued as you go through the day, it's worth having a discussion with your healthcare provider about iron may be the missing piece there, or it may not be iron at all. But when you go to your physician and you're having that discussion, you're at least giving them the opportunity to get a workup started and to figure out what may be the cause of your fatigue. But it really is worth talking to your doctor about. Most of all, I don't want you to brush off fatigue. It's not normal. Do your due diligence and find a reason for it. You deserve to feel good in your body. You deserve to have the energy to go about your day and do the things that you want to do. Only when you are your best self and you're feeling your best can you really continue on this path to being healthier. And that, friends, is our goal. I'm so glad you took the time to spend with me, whether you were out for a walk or a run while you were listening, or driving down the road, or preparing dinner, whatever it is that you were doing. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If this episode hit home, share it with a friend. You may have a girlfriend who is feeling the same way. Pass this episode on to them and tell them to check it out. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss future episodes. Until then, please take care of yourself. I'll be back here next week. Hey, thanks for listening in today. I hope something you heard in this episode will help you on your journey to becoming healthier. Remember, this podcast offers general health information. I am not your personal physician. If you need advice that is specific to you, be sure to consult your physician. If you enjoy this podcast, please consider sharing it with a friend and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. Tune in next week for another great episode of Headed to Healthier. Until then, take care of yourself. Talk soon. Bye.